MakingAScene.org brings you the American Music Fairness Act could finally make radio pay, but indie artists may end up paying a different price.
Okay, so let's jump right in with the number that's really at the core of this whole thing. 0. Yep, you heard that right. $0. That's how much US AM/FM radio pays artists and labels when they play their recordings. Now, songwriters and publishers, they get their cut. But the actual performers, the artists you hear singing, they get zilch. Nothing.
So you might be asking, how is that even possible? Well, this whole zero payment thing is a holdover, right? It comes from a time when radio was the king of music discovery, the only game in town. The thinking was, hey, the free promotion you get is basically your payment. But as MakingAScene.org points out, those days are long gone. I mean, think about it. Now you've got streaming, social media, all the tech in your car. Radio's still big, for sure, but it's not the only gatekeeper anymore.
And you'd think with all this new competition, commercial radio would get, I don't know, more exciting, right? Take more chances? Well, not exactly. In fact, MakingAScene.org puts it perfectly. They say that today commercial radio is less of a talent scout and more like a carefully managed risk system. It's all about focus groups and research, not taking a gamble on that cool new band nobody's heard of yet.
And that whole situation, that's the backdrop for this huge legislative push to shake things up. It's called the American Music Fairness Act, or AMFA, and its goal is pretty simple, to finally close that ancient loophole.
So what exactly is the American Music Fairness Act? Well, it's a proposed law that would require good old-fashioned AM/FM radio stations to pay royalties for the sound recordings they play. It's designed to close this long-standing, kind of weird loophole in the U.S. copyright law. You see, right now, only digital transmissions have to pay. This bill basically says, nope, all audio transmissions need to pay up. Sounds like a small change in wording, but believe me, it's a massive shift in how things are done.
And this really breaks down that shift. It's super important to understand. This doesn't touch the money going to songwriters and publishers. They still get paid just like before. What AMFA does is it adds 2 more groups to the payday. The featured artists, the singers and bands, and the owners of the sound recording, which is usually the record label. It basically brings AM/FM radio into the 21st century, making them play by the same rules as streaming services.
Okay, but the big question, the one everyone asks, is what about the little guys? The tiny local radio station in your hometown. Is this going to put them out of business? Well, the people who wrote the bill thought about that, and they built in some pretty specific shields to protect them.
And here's how those protections work. The Act sets up this tiered system with flat annual fees. So for a really small station, one with less than $100,000 in revenue, the fee is just $10 a year. Seriously, $10. For a qualifying public station, it's $100, and for other non-public stations in that revenue bracket, it's $500. The idea is to make this totally manageable for the small, non-commercial, and community stations out there.
So, problem solved, right? Artists get paid, small stations are protected. Sounds like a huge win for everybody. Well, on the surface, yeah, it seems like a no-brainer. But as MakingAScene.org digs into, when you look a little closer, it gets a lot more complicated.
Because for most indie artists, let's be real, the biggest struggle isn't about missing out on a mountain of royalties from being on heavy rotation everywhere. The biggest fight is just getting on the radio in the first place. And that's a key distinction here. This bill creates a right to get paid, but it doesn't create a right to get played.
And let's say they do get played. Look at how that money would be split. A full 50%, half of it, goes to the owner of the sound recording, which is usually the label. The featured artist gets 45%. And a little sliver goes to the session musicians. So who are the biggest winners here financially? It's the people who already get a ton of airplay and, crucially, own their master recordings. And that's often not the up-and-coming indie artist.
So where do these emerging artists actually get their start? Well, more often than not, it's from the most financially shaky part of the entire radio world, college and community stations. These places are absolutely vital. As MakingAScene.org calls them, they're the cultural infrastructure, the lifeline for artists who are trying something new, something outside the mainstream.
And when we say shaky, we mean it. I mean, look at this stat from data cited by MakingAScene.org. 6 out of 10 community radio stations operate on less than $100,000 a year. For the whole year. These are the exact stations taking a chance on a brand new artist, and they are running on fumes.
Okay, so you're probably thinking, but wait, the fee is only $10 for them. What's the big deal? And that's the real crux of the issue. The danger isn't the fee, it's something else entirely.
It all boils down to one word: friction. Because for these tiny, volunteer-run stations, the biggest cost isn't always money. It's time, it's complexity, it's hassle.
The obvious cost is the fee, right? $10, $100. But the hidden cost, that's the administrative nightmare. We're talking about a whole new legal framework. Certifications, reporting, compliance, all of this paperwork and bureaucracy piled on top of stations that are literally run by a handful of passionate volunteers in their spare time, not a team of paid lawyers and accountants.
And hey, it's not just the stations. This adds a new layer of work for the artists, too. Getting paid isn't automatic. You have to go register with a collective like Sound Exchange. You have to claim all your recordings and keep your catalog updated. You have to make sure all your metadata is perfect so that when your song does get played, the system can actually track it and pay you. It's more business work for people who just want to make music.
And all of this leads us right to the heart of the dilemma that makingascene.org lays out so well. It's this fundamental clash between a principle that is absolutely right and a practical reality that could be really damaging.
And this quote from the source really just nails it. It says, Congress might finally correct a real royalty injustice while weakening one of the last radio spaces that still treats independent music like culture before content. That's the fear right there, that in trying to fix one injustice, we might accidentally break this fragile, vital ecosystem that's all about the art, not just the money.
So the question we're left with isn't as simple as, should radio pay artists? The real question is much tougher. Can we create this right, which artists absolutely deserve, without making college and community radio, their biggest champions, weaker or more cautious or just quieter? Finding that balance, now that's the challenge. Make sure you check out the other great articles and resources on makingascene.org, the place the indie artist goes to build the new music industry.